And welcome everybody to the Huddle here on KGUN9 streaming platforms. I'm Jason Barr from KGUN9 Sports here at the ABC station in Tucson, along with Pat Parris, our main anchor, who did a lot of sports, of course, a veteran St. Louis Cardinals broadcaster. Pat, how are you today?
Doing pretty well, Jason.
Terrific. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple things here. We're going to talk about the University of Arizona football spring game, and then we're going to talk a little NBA as the playoffs are about to start, and also some of the betting lines and how much money is going on the Phoenix Suns right now, the number one seed in the NBA Western Conference. So those are our two topics for today, and we'll get started, Pat, with the spring game. You watched it on TV. I watched it live. I'm going to give you a few takeaways, and then I want to get your takeaways and your thoughts on everything. Takeaway number one, certainly they talked a lot about the takeaways in the spring practices, that the defense needed to do more takeaways. We did see a couple of those, or an interception return for a touchdown. Certainly they got to get better in the red zone. They did a little better in that, of course, going up against themselves. Torrey McMillan, the wide receiver, is a very effective, even when he isn't catching passes. There was 2 pass interference penalties against him. And also Noah Fafita, freshman quarterback, looked very impressive.
Yeah, and I had those similar takeaways. I think don't gloss over the fact that the takeaways have turned around so dramatically for this defense from a year ago. Remember, a year ago, just 6 takeaways the entire season. One of the reasons why they only won 1 ball game. That was tied for last in all of FBS, the 6 takeaways by the defense. And then you add in the giveaways of 23 by the offense. So the minus 17 takeaway margin was the worst in all of FBS. So you need improvements. You need to not give the ball away, and you need to get the ball if you're on defense. I saw great strides, at least through spring. And yes, it's just against your own team. But, Jason, we all have high hopes for a lot more depth at quarterback, better depth at quarterback, better quality at quarterback. And they threw two interceptions. So that says a lot about the defense. And to me, that was my biggest takeaway, was that the defense has gotten better. The offense needs to hold on to the ball better.
And a highlight there, certainly Sam Thomas
yes.
catching a touchdown
She
pass.
She just signed with the Phoenix Mercury a few minutes ago. Sam Thomas did, for the WNBA. So that's good to see.
That's breaking news, Pat. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they put it out on their social media account. So the draft was last night. They do 3 rounds in the WNBA. She was not taken, which is not a shock. Sam Thomas is a very good player. She's going to go the free agent route with the at least starting out here with the Phoenix Mercury. What better team to be on? And we'll get to see if she can make the team. Wouldn't that be something if she was just up the road?
Yeah, she doesn't score a lot of points, but you don't need all 5 players on the court in professional basketball to score a lot of points. And with everything else she does, she certainly would make a good addition to any roster, whether it be basketball or football. But, wide receivers, Keon Burnett, he looked good. He had a good pass catch early in the game that had a touchdown catch, 6'5", 225. Jacob Cowing, he's the transfer from UTEP. We didn't see a lot of him. 5'11", but obviously Teteroy McMillan, 6'4" wide receiver. Dorian Singer had a good catch. Yep, he had a good catch. He was the ball he caught was from Jaden Delora. Singer had a good Territorial Cup game. And then A.J. Jones, a 6'3" receiver. Majon Wright, 6'2". So they're a little taller receiver, and they're going to be better in the red zone. Certainly they can't be any worse on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I was watching the Pac-12 broadcast, Jason, because I was actually getting ready to call the Sugar Skulls game on Saturday. So I watched the Pac-12 Arizona broadcast of it. Yogi Roth, being a former wide receiver, a lot of people maybe don't know that Yogi Roth was the tandem receiver with Larry Fitzgerald at
Pittsburgh.
Pitt. Yeah, so that's where his background is, and he was impressed with the new wide receiving core, or the improved wide receiving.
That's their deepest position.
Yeah, it really is, and it shows. And McMillan being there, I mean, he's a legit, suddenly this is a guy who's going to get a lot of I think he's going to get a lot of attention. Not only offensively are you going to be throwing him the ball, I think defenses are going to have to scheme against him. But I think he's the kind of player that he's a difference maker, Jason. He's the kind of guy that could win a game for you.
There were 2 pass interference calls against him in a spring game. In a spring game.
So that tells you what a tough matchup he is. Yeah. So I think that
and he caught a touchdown pass.
Yeah, he did. And I think that he's going to be a huge difference maker for this offense. And you just got to get him the ball, and you've got to be able to continue to run the ball, which we've known that that they've been able to do at times. They've got to be, and I think, Jason, to me, the offense is going to come down to that offensive line, and
sure.
I'm just not so sure. I'm just not so sure.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Yeah, you don't want Jaden Delore or whoever else running for his life. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Parris here on the Huddle. By the way, you can chime in with some comments, and we'll read them and answer them. And then certainly it's who's going to play quarterback. And Jed Fish was asked about why he's not providing a depth chart. But what do you need a depth chart here for in the spring? I think we all know it's Jaden Delore's position to lose, job to lose. He would have to do a lot wrong to not be the starting quarterback against San Diego State in week 1. The other surprise that came out of it is Will Plummer. He's going to be 5th on the depth chart when it comes out because he's got a shoulder injury and he's going to be out for a few months. So that leaves 2 quarterbacks from last year, Jordan McLeod and Gunnar Cruz, and then certainly Fafita. And one of the things about Noah Fafita is he is decisive.
Yes,
he got the ball and he was throwing it. He wasn't kind of running around a little bit like Gunnar Cruz was back there. He did not look like a high school senior or whatever he is right now, an incoming freshman. I thought that was interesting. I was not expecting that from Fafita in the spring game.
He was a name I heard a lot. People have been talking about him the last couple of days, and I think that's great. I'm not exactly sure where he'll end up on the depth chart, and you better have depth because as we saw last year. That depth will be tested, especially if the offensive line isn't up to par. But you hope that they can make it through with one quarterback, but you have a feeling that they're going to need several.
Well, yeah, and that one quarterback to start, you really think is going to be Jaden Delore. He didn't come here from Washington State not to play, and not only did Gunnar Cruz and Jordan McLeod get hurt at the end of last year, they really didn't do anything to make you think, oh, they've got to be the starting quarterback no matter what. But eventually you get a shot, so you might see them in there at some point. So that's my take. And the skill positions, they're much stronger overall, at the skill positions than they were a year ago. And you go in and you say, well, how many games realistically can this team win this year? I was going to say 3 or 4, and then some of these extra players kind of came in, like Delora and Keon Burnett and McMillan, and I'm upping that a little bit. I think 500 is way too much to ask, but I think 5 or 6 really can happen depending upon the way things shake with this team this year. 4.
And the reason I'm writing it down so I can remember when we look, I got the date 4/12/22. I've got it written down. To me, 4 is where I guess that's where I expect them to be. 4 wins, I expect them to win 4 games. If they've got the talent improvement that we've seen, if you've got another year under Jed Fish, if he's got everybody on the right page, 4 wins is what you're expecting the improvement to be from 1 to 4 wins. That's a lot, Jason, 1 to 4 wins. Would I be happier to see 5 or 6, like you said? Of course. And I'll be very happy if they win 5 or 6 games. But I think I'm gonna keep my expectations somewhere a little bit lower and just say 4 wins. That's my over under. They've got to get to 4 wins. If they get over, then I'm going to be really happy.
This viewer says 5, and there's 2 ways to look at last year. You can look at it and say, well, they outgained so many opponents in games they lost, or you can look at it and say, hey, this team would have been winless if Cal didn't bring in only half their team because they had COVID. So it depends upon if you want to look at it half empty, half full. So you want to go in and look at it with a glass half full if you're an Arizona fan. All right, we've got a special guest here, Pat, today with the NBA playoffs starting up here, and certainly a lot of interest with the Phoenix Suns here in Tucson. We're 100 miles away from Phoenix, and we're happy to be joined now by Ariel Epstein. She is a betting expert from Yahoo Sports. Ariel, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Barr, and I'm joined here by Pat on the Huddle on the KGUN 9 streaming platforms.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sweating out this bet right now. I have Shane Bieber, and I know we're talking NBA.
That's okay.
I have the Cleveland pitcher Shane Bieber over 5.5 strikeouts. He currently has 2 strikes on a batter with 5 strikeouts. So I'm waiting for 1 strike to come in play, forcing fastball. We're good. I can focus on you guys now.
Wait, is he going to be in? Is he going to be in the next inning where he can get that strikeout?
There's 2 outs, so there's still 1 more shot. I hope that he could come in maybe another inning. He looks good, knock wood. We'll see. I'm just going to, now that there's no more 2 strikes, I'm going to focus on you guys and just hope I get off the show with a miracle.
Okay, one last question with this. Before I let Pat ask a question here. what is the odds if you get the other strikeout? Was it like even money to start the game? What was the odds that he would get 6 strikeouts to start the game?
I had to lay a decent amount of juice on it. It was minus 145. However, it went up to 6.5 in some other spots. It was also minus 155 in other spots. I won't lay anything more than 150. This one being minus 145 just was in my limit. Bieber usually goes over that number against teams that have high K rates, and Cincinnati has a top 10 K rate so far to start the season.
Yeah.
That's why I went over 5.5. 6.5 was too many. 5.5 just felt really low for someone like Bieber on his second start.
Well, the Cleveland manager, of course, Terry Francona, who's U of A Wildcat. So, we'll let you talk about the Cleveland Guardians if you'd like a little bit, since Terry Francona's there.
I love tying in the local angle. I worked
Yeah,
in
there you
local
go.
news. I worked in New Bern, North Carolina. I always tied in the local angle to things. I always had these kinds of stories. Like the Kinston Indians were one of the teams. I know we can't say Indians anymore. Kinston Indians was a team in the Eastern North Carolina area. So, yeah, you tie everything back to the local roots.
I noticed that, Ariel, that you worked there. I actually worked in Wilmington, North Carolina a long time ago. How did you get involved, before we get to the Phoenix Suns and some of the bets that we're going to talk about here in a little bit? How did you get involved with Yahoo and become a sports betting expert?
Back in 2019, I actually left local news. I needed to come back home. Just wanted to come back home, be closer to family. I was over the local news side of things, just from that area in particular, because we had a hurricane. It wiped out the station. There was a lot of different issues. So it was time to go. It was time to move on. I went home unemployed, trying to figure it out. Saw on Twitter this company called Sports Grid, who I used to work for. It was sports betting. They said, hey, PASPA was just repealed a couple of years ago. This thing's going to blow up in the next 10 years. Wasn't sure when, just wanted to get ahead of it because daily fantasy was already so oversaturated with all the content. You couldn't get into daily fantasy anymore, just fantasy in general. Betting was the next big thing. So I ended up taking it the bull by the horns and learned everything that I needed to know about sports betting. Here we are now with Yahoo Sports.
Yeah, Ariel, you're way ahead of the curve. Good for you. And of course, sports betting is blown up in the state of Arizona. They keep setting records every month for, fastest to however many millions over 6 months. So it's taken off like gangbusters. And we're talking about the Phoenix Suns. Now everybody's picking. Why not? I especially when you consider how well they did breaking their own franchise record for wins this year.
I love Phoenix. I know everyone probably loves Phoenix because nobody could see anybody beating this team in the Western Conference. The thing is, if you're going to bet them, you've got to do it now. The second that those Suns get a win, you are never going to see this number again unless they get into some kind of 0-3 hole, which probably won't happen. They have to win this series, and even if they win this series, you will never see the number right now that you're getting on them to win a title, to win the Western Conference. This is your best time. So if you're out there in Phoenix and you want to bet on the Suns, don't wait. You've got to do it now. You will never see this number again the rest of the playoffs.
Okay, Ariel, can you see these numbers here that we're putting up? Explain this. 30% of all money on championship futures is on the Suns.
Yeah, so you're seeing that 30%. I mean, you're seeing a decent chunk of the money. If you think about it, there's 12 teams. So you've got a bunch of different teams that are in the mix that splitting up that percentage. Now, the thing is, these numbers are always a little bit different per book. You're going to see a book that's in Phoenix or have a Phoenix fan base. You're going to see more money come in on the Suns than you may in New Jersey. It was funny because I was talking to an odds maker out in Las Vegas who runs the Westgate, one of my close friends, John Murray. He told me that, which team was it that they needed to lose last? They needed a team to lose. Oh, it was North Carolina in March Madness. They had so much UNC money to win the championship out in their New Jersey book that they needed North Carolina to lose the championship. They couldn't rely. Their futures bets were too heavy. There's too much of a North Carolina fan base out on the East Coast that in Vegas, it was going to hurt them. That's what you're going to see out there in Phoenix, that it's going to hurt these sports books because when you have a major team in a major city that has sports betting, you're going to see a huge liability. And I bet you the books have a ton of liability on the Suns.
Okay, and plus 105 to win the Western Conference. That's pretty much even money. No, that they're going to win the Western Conference. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, plus 100, plus minus 110 would be. But the thing is, this is so low. Like when you look at other teams to win their conference, they're usually longer than 2-1, 3-1. You're seeing this at plus 105, and that's why I'm saying the second that the Suns win any series, this is going to flip to favoring them. This is not going to go from plus 105 to plus 103. This is going from plus 105 to probably minus 105, if not minus 110, by the time that the next series rolls around if Phoenix wins. And if Phoenix sweeps a series, forget it. This number is going to minus 110, no doubt. That's why I'm saying the best time to jump in is plus 105. And then you're saying the plus 260 to win it all. That plus 260 is low too, and that's why I'm not betting it. I say Phoenix Suns fans, go bet it if you want, because it's essentially you're hoping you're getting a plus 260 money line in the NBA title game. That's what you're betting this for. I would rather bet somebody who has longer odds, somebody out of the Eastern Conference. Like, I would go focus on the Eastern Conference for NBA title more so than the West. The West is really tough for me with all the injuries to Steph Curry in Golden State, to Luka Doncic in Dallas. The East is more wide open because even though the Miami Heat are the number one team, they have longer odds than the Bucks and the 76ers and the Nets. And the Nets are in a play-in game, yet Miami is at 10-1 to win the NBA title. It makes absolutely no sense.
That's a good point. Actually, a very good point. If we're all in on the Phoenix Suns, then we're also all in on who's going to win the Finals MVP. I saw some money lines on or betting lines on that, and Devin Booker seemed to be a great pick. Not necessarily if you want to make money, but he was the odds-on favorite, even ahead of Giannis to repeat.
Well, that's the thing. If you want to, and I always say this, whether it's the Super Bowl, whether it's the NBA, you can look at those MVP markets and just assume, instead of having to bet a plus 260 to win it all, you probably are getting way longer odds. I'm sorry, I don't know what odds you guys have up on Devin Booker. What do you guys have on a number for Devin Booker?
I think it was like 275, plus 275. It was still.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, still not very good. Right.
Yeah,
I was surprised.
See,
I was surprised.
That surprises me too, because usually, and it's funny, you can't bet that market in New York. So that's why I don't really get to see the numbers. I have to go and try to get into another sports book. It's illegal to bet the MVP markets in New York for some reason. Anyway, I'm shocked by that because the odds shouldn't be plus 265 on Devin Booker, because there's way more variations. And if you look at the Super Bowl MVP odds, you're going to get somewhere in that 6-7-1 range on someone like, let's say, Patrick Mahomes, even if it's 5-1, but you would never get the same odds because there's so many factors that go into an individual player making it there, as opposed to just a team effort. I don't know. That's not good. Don't bet that then. Just bet the Suns.
Okay, Ariel, I know you only have another minute left, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me a quirky type of bet that somebody could bet on, whether it's two teams are going to make the finals or this team versus that team. What's kind of a quirky bet that you could do maybe as a long shot for a fan out there?
Ooh, as a long shot. Oh,
or anything. Doesn't have to be a long shot.
I'm going to give you guys an inside scoop into the props world, because this is what I try to tell people about betting NBA playoffs. Live bet. Live betting is going to give you so many advantages. Now, it's hard to live bet in the regular season, because in the regular season, you have so many games going on at once. When you're in the playoffs and there's only one or two games going on at a time, you can take a look at those numbers, see how players do in the first and second half. The best example I could give you is that last year, the Utah Jazz center, Rudy Gobert, he would only put up 2 to 4 points in the first half. He'd put up, let's say, another 10, 12 points in the second half every single time. If I were to have gone and bet the over on his 14.5 points prop each game, I would have lost majority of them. What I do is I wait for the halftime number to come out. When it goes down to 8.5, I bet the over. He ends up at anywhere between 14 and 18 points. That's why I love betting those live numbers on points prop overs instead. Now, you have to go make sure that these players play better in the second half than the first. Devin Booker is not one of those players you're doing this for. You're doing this for more of the players that are more underrated in the points prop market. That's why I looked to John Collins last year for Atlanta, Rudy Gobert in Utah. If you go and look at the splits, you'll be able to see those numbers, who plays well in the second half as opposed to the first.
Wow, Ariel, I am impressed with your knowledge. I mean, you know your stuff here. As Pat said, this has really taken off, and I've heard about that live betting and what a thrill that could be. So you answered the question and gave me something to think about. So we appreciate that, and appreciate a couple of minutes here joining us at a different time for you. I know you're on the East Coast, so thanks for taking a minute out of your dinner time and then joining us. And I think we'd like to have you back in the fall when University of Arizona basketball comes around, and what type of bets you can do for the U of A basketball as their season starts next fall. So So thank you so much for a few minutes here on the Huddle with me and Pat, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me on, and good luck to those Suns.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Ariel.
awesome. Thanks so much. Yep. All right. Wow, Pat. Boy, she was good.
She's impressive. I've heard a lot, as you have, about people who really get excited about that live betting, and I know you can do that, and I know a lot of people take advantage of that in-game betting, and maybe that's a way to approach this. She said the Suns don't have you're not going to make a lot of money if you bet the Suns to win it all, unless they happen to get behind in a series or something like that. But maybe the live betting is the route.
Yeah, certainly in a college game, we've seen how many players don't have a lot of points at halftime, and all of a sudden they get so many free throws in the second half, and their total is they score 6 at halftime and they got 23 by the time the game ends. So I'm sure that's factored into the wagering. But I thought that was interesting, and you can bet on the Suns even though we don't know who their first round opponent is going to be yet.
No,
but that was also interesting that what she said about how if you like the Suns, do it now, because if they win their first game, the odds are going to be a lot different. But you can really take the other side of that too, couldn't you, Pat? If they lose their first game and you still like the Suns, maybe get a little
that's
bit
when you
better
win.
odds.
Yeah.
So, look, this is what you do with your fun money. This is not what you do with your mortgage and your rent.
With your rent money. No, and it's betting's not for everybody. Betting's not for everybody, and some just could care less. But others, it's kind of their hobby, and they enjoy it, and it makes the game more pleasurable. For me, I don't bet, but I understand how important it is to some of our viewers.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, all right, Pat. What are you working on today with the news? I know we got some stuff going on, and
we do. I've actually. There's a world premiere of a new movie coming out tonight. Now it's a small budget picture locally made called Once Upon a Time in Tombstone. So it's got a Western Tombstone theme to it. And I talked to the producer director today, and we're going to have that at 5, 6, and 10.
Terrific. So I've got a story on retired racehorses in Arizona.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, a place for retired racehorses here in Tucson. So I'll have that at 6 o'clock. I got to get working on that. So I know you need to get going too. Yep. So this has been the Huddle on KGUN9 streaming platforms. I'm Jason Barr and Pat Parris. And thanks so much for joining us. And we'll be back here next week at the same time. See you, everybody.